Right, that's me talking.
This is me talking.
Still, how am I still louder than you?
Because you're loud.
I have to cut that off now. Cool. Right. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. It's very foggy today.
It's very foggy.
I can see to the edge of our bit of woods, which is like, what do you reckon that is? 30 metres?
Yeah.
40? And then nothing. Can't see the fields.
It's white.
I can't see our cars.
But there are loads of spider webs covered in little dewdrops, which is what I like about
the
a day
holly
like
is
today.
very good for looking at that. Oh, the buzzard's up there, in the tree. You see a silhouette. Anyway, yeah, we're in. It's very still, and it's been very warm this week.
Yeah.
I feel like the podcast is starting with my weekend weather.
Exactly.
It's like
the weather in retrospect.
What's it been like this week?
Yeah.
It's been lovely.
Yeah.
And then,
except we both have hay fever, which is a curse upon forest school leaders.
It
but
is,
I think,
especially when it's tree pollen.
Yes, allergic to the forest school leaders allergic to trees. It's the irony. But I think both of our meds are starting to kick in now.
I took mine for one day and then stopped.
Oh, you've stopped.
Doesn't seem to be. I mean, I might be sneezing and dying by the end of the podcast, but
yeah,
at the moment I feel fine.
Cool.
So we're going to talk about. It's almost a this week in news.
Yes.
So there's a couple of
political
different.
today.
Yeah, it's going to get. Gemma might be standing up with the red flag and waving it, and okay. So we're going to talk about, I guess, class and wealth, and whether outdoors is a right or a privilege.
Yeah.
So, should we talk about the news story first?
Yes.
Because I think that's the sort of the most recent thing. It was on the BBC News main page yesterday, which is the 27th yesterday of March, and it was a story looking at one particular housing development where they had built up a walled play area for children, and were enforcing that only the children in this housing development, which was a well-off housing development.
Well, it was that I think all the new developments have to have a certain percentage of social housing, but there's already been stories about poor doors. Do you hear about those?
Yep.
So, like you have the percentage that's social housing and the percentage that's privately owned, and the privately owned bit, even though it's the same development, has like swish and lobby and fancy doors and all that malarkey, and then the social housing bit has the
service
poor door.
hatch.
And this, exactly. And this is like that, but the social tenants are not able to access the swanky playground.
The playground.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of the article was written. So there were quite a few opinion pieces on it, but I saw one article where they had talked to one of the children who was saying that she couldn't go and play with the other children, and how that made her feel and stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess we can kind of. I don't know whether it's worth delving into that as a thing, because it's outside of. It's in the realms of us as play workers. It's an interesting thing, but whether it's strictly applicable to forest school and the outdoors, or whether you want to.
Well, then it kind of linked to the blog that has been doing the rounds, written by Nick Elvey. Miss Elvey's Curious School of the Wild, and so that's been shared quite widely, and I think there are crossovers there, because her blog is musing on whether the outdoors is a privilege, and thinking about like, for example, the kit that you would need to buy, or you'd hope to buy, if you were going to be in the outdoors successfully. So she talks about Duke of Edinburgh award and the kit list for that, and how much actually that costs you, and how exclusive that is then, and excludes people who can't afford those things, and talks about a speaker who's going around talking to students about like being outdoors and micro adventures and that kind of thing, and then a student going, why would I pay to do this? Like, my life at home is already really hard. I'm already eating really basic food and sleeping on the floor. Why would I go outdoors and do that? And so that whole culture of like, oh, just go back to basics, it's
in
such
some way
a middle class kind of. Oh yeah, it's just so wholesome to like live like a homeless person for
Well,
a
I was going to say it kind of.
in the woods, like.
There was, and now this is vague history, so I'm going to talk in broad terms. There was, particularly in France, I think in the 1800s, a trend of dressing like commoners,
peasants. Oh yeah,
like peasants,
yeah.
And perhaps this rings a little bit of that of, ho, isn't it japes to go and sleep somewhere uncomfortable, which is deeply I was going to say offensive, but I don't know if offensive is the right word.
Yeah.
Maybe unsettling if your home life is sleeping somewhere uncomfortable or sleeping somewhere cold or doing whatever. But then, I don't know, I worry that if you started going down that road, I don't know.
It's just having an awareness, isn't it? And being kind of shaken from your little bubble of middle class loveliness to realise that actually there are a lot of barriers that are invisible to you because you're just riding along on your privilege and you don't necessarily see it. So especially because we're sort of fighting for a cause already, if you see what I mean. So I think we're particularly prone to being blind to the issues that are going along because we're focused on, oh my gosh, the current education system is stopping children being outside. Oh my gosh, we're losing our connection to nature. We're like blazing the trail, hopefully, for a particular cause, but and getting quite righteous about it, as we should. And that's not to say that that's bad. It's just that we come up across a lot of barriers anyway from mostly adults kind of pushing back against us or policy pushing back against us. And actually an issue much closer to home might be that we're here fighting for all these children to have this opportunity, but actually the poverty that some of those children face means that they can't access it, and we're not really looking in the right places.
I think it's to take it really close to home. It's often, I think it's something where you when we try and empathise with other people, and particularly like parents in schools, it can be really difficult to. So the blog, she said it was Nick, talks about it's difficult to get a good pair of waterproof trousers for under 40 or 50 quid. It's difficult to get whatever. But I know I have heard lots of forest school teachers and outdoor practitioners who, when people say, oh, they don't want the kids to get muddy, there's sometimes, not always, I think most people have a modicum of empathy, but I have heard people say, oh, well, it's like one change of clothes, how difficult can that be to pay? And you go, okay, well, one, that might be, if you haven't got a washing machine in your home, that might be a massive
trip. Or you've
only
got one pair of school trousers and they've only come in their uniform. Yeah.
But also taking it wider than that and empathising that, yes, you are asking for one change of clothes for forest school, but in the broader context, that the school is asking for forest school on this day and a washed PE kit on this day, and also we're going to make bread on tomorrow, so can everyone come in with their own flour and all those things that you do get asked for. And yes, each of those things in isolation, flour isn't much, washing a PE kit isn't much, but you add it all up and it does. It can become a thing where you go, right, well, what's the thing I'm going to drop? It's probably going to be the outdoors, which I think, and also it touches on that idea that some people, if they misunderstand what forest school is, can come to a few sessions and then can go, oh, well, we can do this ourselves. You can do this yourselves. Absolutely, you can do yourselves. This is, I sort of try and think in my head of forest school as a springboard, so that it's like a concentrated dose once a week. And the hope is that you carry that on throughout the week. And yes, maybe we point out that the holly berries are out at the moment. But then when you walk to school and you go past a holly bush, oh, you see them there, and all those things. And so...
I mean, like, when we met this morning, you were like, oh, having read the blog,
the blog made me feel very uncomfortable.
Icky feeling, and I've kind of had that uncomfortable feeling since leaving. As I've said before on the podcast lots of times, like, I'm a big advocate for like good state education. I don't like the way it is at the moment, but I'm a socialist basically, and I have a personal problem myself with the fact that I would never say never, but I would prefer not to go and work in a private school, for example. That's not part of my value system. However, I have effectively left state education and helped set up a private school here in this forest. It is because you have to pay to come, and we have received funding for some projects which have enabled us to deliver free sessions for local schools and stuff like that. So it's not 100%. There have been opportunities where we have been able to offer stuff for free. But at the end of the day, most of our clients have paid, and that doesn't sit comfortably with me because at the same time, you're also, because of kind of the way times have changed, I've also felt this weird thing about forest school, that if I'm explaining it to somebody who's never heard of it, I almost always end up using the phrase, my job is to be paid to deliver the kind of childhood that I had as a child for free. And that sits uncomfortably with me as well, because it's sort of like, well, here is nature and it is nature, but this is a safe bit of nature that belongs to you, and people come here and we enable them to have as free a play experience as possible, where 30 years ago you would have just gone and you would have done that, whether it be in a natural landscape or on a building site, or a bit of both. This was my case. But
so I think I completely empathise with that, and I do have moments where I feel the same. But I would. So we've talked before, I don't think on the podcast, but how sometimes my thoughts about what are we doing? You know, what is the value of us? No. Like, what is the value of it?
It's like that
moves kind of in a circle of like, oh, actually, I'm a place-based designer, and I'm not actually here. I'm just here to sort of like lay out the things and see what the kids go for. And then a little while later, I might, you know, in a week or two's time, I might go, no, actually, I think I'm here to be a mentor and just a person in the children's lives to kind of, so that they can see an adult in the world and have a chat with someone who has an expertise. And then I kind of think, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe we're here to be like not parenting role models, that sounds very big-headed, but to kind of
a place to discuss
parenting, and a place to experience a type of education and a type of way of interacting. But so what I would say is that yes, so you and I are different ages, and I don't think I had the childhood of this. I think I had a maybe touches of it, but my parents are not outdoors confident people. They couldn't. It sounds very silly when you boil it down to like they couldn't name plants, or they couldn't do that, because that's not what a knowledge of nature is. But sometimes I think that one of the valuable things that we do is offer a chance for parents who, like me, didn't have that. It's almost a safe inroad into. Like, I do want that to be. You know, I didn't have a really strong nature connection. In my childhood with my parents, and so I'm going, maybe but I would like my children to have it. So that it's a bit like if we accept that state education has a purpose, it's to educate children differently than their parents' limitations, right? I don't believe that, because I'm home ed championing, but in the same way that I wouldn't say to a child, I don't know how to play the piano, so you will never learn how to play the piano, because there is no way we can learn to play the piano. I do think there's a value in, and that's where I feel more okay with it being a paid service, because it's if I wanted to learn to play the piano, I would go and see a piano teacher, and I would pay for an expertise, and then I would.
Completely. I see your point of view, and that is quite a kind of home ed point of view, because as a home eding parent, if you want to offer a broad curriculum, then that is what you would need to do. Whereas if you look at it from a more socialist point of view, you would say, well, it's the state's job to provide for free the access to a really well-rounded and broad balanced experience of education that will lead you to have a fulfilling life as an adult. And nature connection and free play and being outdoors should be a massive part of that, and it should be for free, and people should be able to access that for everybody, not just people who because we definitely have we have wealthier families and less wealthy families who attend. Obviously, it's not a very, I'd say we do have a kind of fairly wide, well, I say that, how can you know? You can't really know, can you? But there are definitely some families for whom they will go, oh, okay, that's a bit of a pinch, but I'm going to pay it, as opposed to some families who will go, oh yeah, just it's a
doesn't matter if we miss 3 or 4.
Exactly. But it should be, but at least that we're already engaging with those parents who are engaged, if you know what I mean. That's another thing. It's not just money, it's about
self-selecting audience, isn't it?
It's about people who know what Forest School is to begin with, and after knowing what it is, be interested in it and be bothered to make the effort to make that experience happen for their child. Whereas if it's at school and it's for everybody and it's done well and properly, then
that's where I think
every child, whether their family had ever heard of Forest School before or whether their parents value it or not, they get the experience to have it. And
I think that's where that's possibly where the gears grind to a halt for me. So like I've almost got foots in two camps, because we do run a Ofsted registered kindergarten, which is government funded for for most of the children that come there, and so we are free education, and now you know, so we do that. We also have the other bit where we're a privately funded thing, but part of that, you know, you could look at it and say, I'm going to come back to another point in a minute, but you could look at it and say, yes, the private sessions are more expensive and have a self-selecting audience, but they facilitate us to underpay ourselves and run which is the thing. But that's not, so second, so to go back to what you were saying about where if it is in the school and it should be free to everyone and all this, and then the bit that I want to touch is you said and good. You said good practice, and I think that is where you feel the gears grind to a halt, because I think I would have absolutely no issue with grants and saying this is, you know, you can be the Forest School teacher, you know, with the government will pay, children will come here, you do the sessions for those, you know, absolutely no issue with it. But I think I would imagine lots of other practitioners have had the same thing, where they go in with that mentality of like, okay, I can get a contract with a school to deliver Forest School once a week, once an afternoon for this class. That is brilliant. And then 2 weeks in, you start to realise that they're going to slightly alter what you're doing. And 3 weeks in, they're going to... And so you end up with this... Because state education has a need to unify and to homogenise and to go, look, well, we can measure that a Birmingham child is getting the same nature outdoor connection than a child in Southampton. I disagree that should be the case. I think you should go, well, there's different nature in Birmingham, and there's different things in Southampton, whatever.
I believe that schools and teachers should have far more autonomy than they do now.
Well, exactly, and I think that's what drives people then to go into private sector, because they
have more control.
And I think that's what's brought you and I to where we are. Not necessarily that we looked at it going in and went, this is the private sector and it will give us this. I think the appeal was, you can provide the service that you believe is valuable and see if there is an audience for it. Now, yes, that comes with all the different caveats and whatever else, but it's like, I know lots of people use the word sell their soul when they talk about school sessions and things like that. So it's difficult, you know.
Definitely, and making it pay is an absolutely huge problem. You know, it's just like we just sort of go along doing it, and then you do your tax return and you're like, I'm sorry, what? What? How? This isn't feasible.
What did I put in? I put into one of the government websites the other day how much I work and how much money I make, and it popped up and said, can you just double check this number because you're being paid below the minimum wage? For the, you know, and I was just like, no, I am. Like,
and you know, and we've had, and as a education provider for the council, and we had the guy from the council come round and was like, this is all amazing. I'm a bit worried about how sustainable it is for you, though. Can you not like have some more children in, or like up your rate? Like you really need to. How are you living? Run another day and have more children. We're like, we can't have more children. This is what we want. 10 children. It's Forest School. We don't want to, you know, have our
diminish the quality so that you can maximize.
Exactly.
And that's that I would say is a lot of nurseries' business model is more to, you know, one very qualified person, lots of assistants, maximise the amount of children that are in, go, you know, that's how you, and then go, right, well, the government pays this much and this much and this much, but you are sacrificing a quality there, not, you know, not completely, and then not saying it's awful and no nursery should ever exist, but that it is a different
One thing that's just struck me as well is that probably a lot of people listening to this will be offering services that, as a forest school, that we don't. For example, services for the council for
Cruise.
Yeah, so children out of education, excluded children, all the rest of it, and that is, and I would really like. Often with this podcast, I really want more people to be here, or for a dialogue to start, because I would really love to hear more about how that is working for people, and whether that is a kind of reliable source of income and a thing that they think is delivering the ethos of forest school in an idealistic way, or whether there are lots of compromises that have to be made there as well, in the same way as going into schools and things like that, and whether people pay on time and all of that kind of thing, because we've also had issues with that, even with the work with schools that we have. It's a whole minefield. So you've got this altruistic vision of like offering it to as many people as possible at an affordable rate or for free, and then you just come up against, as a business owner, all of these issues that mean, like, if you need food on the table for your family, you know, it's difficult. I don't know. I mean, I was thinking about, like, could you imagine a world? So I think it does come down to politics. I really think we're talking about a political issue on a kind of nationwide level, and I'm thinking, in an idealistic world, what would be the answer? So you design a government, and what is their attitude to forest school for children and families?
Well, I think if I cherry picked from other nations and other examples of you know, because I don't think you could pick something completely out of the air. I'm trying to think of other things. I would pin my colours on later state education, so 7, possibly 8, and like the 33 hours, I would have something that was in place that said, from the age of 5 to 7, if you want to, the government will give you credits towards outdoor provision, or just like, I think that's where it would be tricky to enforce, because so the way that it like childcare credits work at the moment is like, it's just childcare. It doesn't matter to the government whether you spend it on a deluxe outdoor, there's 2 adults to every child kind of nursery, or whether you spend that at your and what's available to you, and all those things, so I think that's what I would I think that would have a massive impact.
Then I think that would work, but it would have to, I mean, at the moment, funding for nursery is £4.7 in our county per child, whatever kind of setting you're running. So if you are an indoor nursery with 30 children in one room and one qualified person and a couple of assistants who are less qualified, then it's the same. So that would have to change. I mean, that's got to change anyway. There's the whole champagne
lemonade, isn't it? And I think that's a topic for a different podcast, because I think the idea that whether being outdoors is a privilege is something that if we're going to think about it politically, it's a question of, well, is it gone, but as more and more stuff is sold, more and more land is sold into the private sector or to the National Trust, or to there are less spaces to take your children to do it for free. And so is it a backed into a corner kind of situation where, well, how do we get back from there? You're talking about a government trying to buy back green space, which, I mean, I think...
Well, if they can't do that, they should be subsidising and funding forest schools then, shouldn't they? They should be going, okay, you guys are all
the money
qualified.
We made from selling this green space is going to go into outdoor provision. I think they've got other things on their plate at the moment.
Well, they shouldn't.
Yeah, let's try and keep it's good.
It's important.
Oh my goodness, So because people haven't had enough of politics, and what they want to know is
But do you know what though? People haven't had enough of politics, because they've had enough of Brexit, and they haven't had enough of all the other stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
With that, but nobody's talking about it anymore.
You're right.
No, because I've just watched The Age of Stupid, the film about climate change,
Right.
which is being re-released because it's 10 years old, and it hasn't aged. It's just terrifying.
Can people watch that somewhere?
Yes. So it's being re-released, and the if you want to find ways to see it, then you can go to Spanner Films website. Spanner as in like a wrench.
Can you spell it?
SPANNER.
Films.com.
Films, something like that.
Okay, and it's called The Age of Stupid.
The Age of Stupid, directed by
Okay.
Franny Armstrong. Yeah, watch it. It's good and terrifying.
It's fired you up.
It's fired me up, man. And yeah, does mean that we might all be out of a job anyway, because we won't be able to go outdoors.
Yeah, we will.
Because the weather
Just
will
costs
be
more
so extreme.
because we'll have to buy more extreme clothes.
Do you like an indoor-outdoor kind of thing, where it's like fake woods inside a massive hangar?
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we talked around the topic of. I don't know that we've put the worlds to rights.
It.
No,
haven't solved the
we
problem
didn't solve
yet.
anything. I don't think that was the. Okay. It would be good. I imagine there will be lots of thoughts popping around this one where we've
Yeah.
been offensive or
Yeah.
shown our ignorance in some way.
Oh,
so
definitely.
yeah,
Please
we would.
point out
Yeah.
our ignorance.
Please
and
do.
Share your amazing success stories or otherwise of making it accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
I did try and set up a website page thing, blog spot for the podcast.
Right.
So it does exist somewhere. So maybe if I try and find it, then when
We'll put it in the show notes.
put it in the show notes, and then people can go there and tell us
Have a chat.
what we don't know.
Cool. I say again, we're at the Somerset Play Forum. I've forgotten the date. I knew it last week.
In June.
It's in June. It's June 17th or 19th. One of those
19th.
two. 19th.
Yeah.
We were having a chat about storytelling, and we've also so we've got two. Well, so if you want to come to the Somerset Play Forum, you can hear us talk about storytelling.
It's a workshop.
And
It's a practical workshop.
music's practical workshop, and there's lots of other bits going on there. Or if you would like to, we are running a full day of storytelling and music and drama, and kind of how all that creative art stuff feeds into Forest School and how it can feed into outdoor sessions at schools. And that is on our website.
It's on the 28th of April.
28th of April.
It's a
so
Sunday.
Whole day. It's a Sunday. Nice. Yeah, should be really, really good. So yeah, have a look at those two, and if not, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.